Assalamu alaikum. This video is about the DNS protocol. We'll be talking about the DNS protocol in general, its history, and the official standards. DNS is the abbreviation of Domain Name System, which is a stratified name system for services, computers, and for any other possessions attached to the network or the internet. DNS is a distributed internet directory service. DNS is used mostly to translate between domain names and IP addresses. DNS primarily uses a UDP on port number 53 to serve requests. DNS queries consist of a single UDP request followed by a single UDP reply from the server. The TCP protocol is used only when the response data exceeds 512 bytes. DNS operates basically in two modes, lookups or zone transfers. Lookups are the resource records kept by the DNS server, and zones are a set of servers operating at multiple sites cooperatively to solve the mapping problem. DNS is general purpose and it is not restricted to network device names. The client side of the DNS is called the DNS resolver. It is responsible for initiating and sequencing the queries that ultimately lead to a full resolution. That is the translation of a domain name to an IP address. There are basically two types of DNS queries. A non-recursive query is one in which the DNS server provides a record for a domain for which it is authoritative itself, or it provides a partial result without querying other servers. A recursive query is one for which the DNS server will fully answer the query or give an error by querying other named servers as needed. The DNS query format is as follows: DNS message, DNS header, question entries, answer resource record. The address resolution process is as follows. First, the network host is configured with an initial cache of the known address of the root name servers. Secondly, a query to one of the root servers to find the server authoritative for the top level domain. Thirdly, a query to obtain TLD server for the address of a DNS server authoritative for the second level domain. Lastly, repetition of the previous step to process each domain name label in sequence until the final step, which returns the IP. Before DNS was invented in 1983, each computer on the network retrieved a file called hosts.txt from a computer at SRI International. The hosts.txt file mapped names to numerical addresses. A host file still exists on modern operating systems by default and generally contains a mapping of the IP address to localhost. The rapid growth of the network in 1980s made the centrally maintained, handcrafted host.txt file unsustainable. It became necessary to implement a more scalable system capable of automatically disseminating the requisite information. In August 1982, ARPANET organized the Domain Naming Convention for Internet User Applications, at the end of which they described a distributed system for Internet name service. At the request of John Postel and Paul Mokapetris invented the domain naming system in 1983 and wrote the first implementation. In 1984, four Berkeley students wrote the first Unix implementation called the Berkeley Internet Name Domain Server. Now we will discuss the RFC 1035, which is the official standard of the DNS protocol. The RFC comprehensively explains the DNS protocol and the system. It is divided into various parts which shall be discussed now. The main purpose of this RFC is that every domain on the internet has a unique identifier. The main purpose of the DNS system is to provide feasibility to the users of the internet. The standards defined in this RFC are extensible. In the DNS protocol, the user sends a request to the DNS resolver, which in turn sends a request to the name server and generates a response. The user passes domain names as arguments to the resolver. The resolver in turn returns the host IP address or the mail server address. The data is transmitted in the form of octets. The domain names can be of the sizes of up to 255 octets, while the UDP message can go up to 512 octets. A DNS message is divided into 5 sections: the header, the question, the answer, the authority, and any additional variable. The header contains the following sections: a 16-bit identifier which is generated by a program and helps replying outstanding queries; QR, which has a value of 1 or 0 for query or response respectively; the opcode, which is a 4-bit field that specifies type of query, authoritative answer; TC, which specifies whether the message is truncated or not; and finally R-code, which is a 4-bit field used for error identification. According to the RFC, the preferred naming syntax is to name the existing objects with minimal changes. The domain names are case insensitive. Besides following this RFC, the naming should also include the specifications provided by RFC 822. The header includes fields that specify which of the remaining sections are present and also specify whether the message is a query or a response. The question section contains fields that describe a question to a name server, like query type, query class, or the query domain name. The last 3 fields contain the resource records